Lily Bennett stared at her reflection in the dimly lit restroom of Chicago O'Hare, sighing as she ran her fingers through her wavy auburn hair, trying to make herself look at least somewhat decent. The harsh fluorescent lights did her no favors, highlighting every trace of exhaustion carved into her pale face. The dark circles under her green eyes told the story of endless weeks spent pulling double shifts at Rosewood Diner, barely getting by to support her 7-year-old daughter, Mia. Her hands trembled slightly as she splashed cold water on her face, forcing herself to stay awake. She didn't have a choice. She couldn't afford to miss this flight. Not after the call from her Aunt Rachel had turned her world upside down 2 nights ago. "Lily, you need to come now." Rachel's voice had cracked over the line. "Your father, he's not doing well. The doctors say it could be any day now." That call had hit her like a train. Her father, Henry Bennett, had always been her anchor, even when life had been merciless. Lily had spent the past few years trying to build a secure life for Mia, but in doing so she'd waited too long to visit him back in Boston. Now she was boarding a last-minute flight, praying she would make it in time. The only reason she could even afford the ticket was because of Rachel's help. Lily could never have scraped together the money on her own, not with rent overdue and Mia's school fees hanging over her like a storm cloud. This morning's goodbye with Mia had nearly shattered her. Mia had clung to her like a lifeline, her tiny hands clutching the sleeves of Lily's faded denim jacket. "Mommy, why can't I come with you?" Her big blue eyes had glistened with tears. "I don't want you to go." Lily had forced herself to smile, kneeling down and kissing her daughter's forehead. "Sweetheart, I promise I'll call you every single day and I'll bring you something really special from Boston. Okay?" It had been a lie, but she needed Mia to feel safe. What she hadn't told her was that she wasn't sure she'd come back the same person. Because if her father didn't make it, nothing would ever be the same again. Her ex, Mark, had stood in the doorway, arms crossed, his expression hard to read. Their relationship had ended bitterly 3 years ago, and although they kept it civil for Mia's sake, there was still an unspoken tension between them. "I'll take care of her," Mark had said gruffly, as if reading her mind. Lily had nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. No matter how messy things were between them, she had no choice but to trust him. Final boarding call for Flight 9B to Boston. The announcement over the loudspeakers snapped her back to reality. She grabbed her battered leather purse and bolted through the terminal, her worn-out sneakers pounding the polished floors. She reached the gate just as the agent was about to close the door. "Wait, please," she panted, holding out her boarding pass. The attendant's stern expression softened slightly as she scanned the ticket. "Go ahead, ma'am, seat 14C." Lily hurried down the jet bridge, her heart pounding as she stepped onto the plane. She took a shaky breath, scanning the row numbers. Row 14. She stopped short. In the window seat next to hers sat a man who looked like he'd stepped right out of a glossy business magazine. His perfectly tailored navy suit fit him effortlessly. The crisp white shirt opened just enough at the collar to show a hint of a lean, strong frame. His dark hair was neatly styled, but it was his piercing gray eyes that caught her off guard. He was reading a leather-bound book, his fingers gliding over the pages. But when Lily struggled to lift her carry-on into the overhead bin, his gaze flicked up. The moment their eyes met, something in his expression shifted. Without a word, he stood in one smooth, effortless motion and took the bag from her hands, stowing it as if it weighed nothing. "Let me help," he said, his voice calm, carrying a faint British accent. Lily's breath caught in her throat. She wasn't used to kindness from strangers, especially not from men who looked like they belonged in penthouses, not squeezed into economy seats. "Thank you," she murmured, sliding awkwardly into her seat. He returned to his book, but Lily could still feel the quiet strength of his presence beside her. Intimidating, yet strangely comforting. She tried to focus on the runway lights outside the window as the plane taxied, but her exhaustion won. Her body gave in, her eyelids growing heavier with every passing second. She fought it, but the last thing she registered was the hum of the plane lifting off and the steady warmth next to her as her head gently tilted to the side. Lily didn't know how long she'd been asleep before she stirred awake. a wave of horror washing over her as she realized she'd been using the stranger's shoulder as a pillow. She jerked upright, her cheeks flaming with embarrassment. "Oh my God," she gasped, pulling away as his expensive suit jacket slipped off her shoulders. The man turned to her with a calm, unreadable expression. And to Lily's utter disbelief, he smiled. Not a smirk, not an amused grin, but a genuine, warm smile that sent an unexpected flutter through her chest. "You needed the rest," he said simply, as if having a complete stranger sleeping on him for hours was the most natural thing in the world. Before she could even think of what to say, he pressed the call button above their seats. A flight attendant appeared almost instantly, her curious gaze flicking between them. "Could we have some water, please?" he asked smoothly. Lily blinked. "I can get my own water." "I know," he said, tilting his head just slightly, his gray eyes glinting with something she couldn't read. "But I don't mind." And just like that, Lily Bennett's world shifted in a way she never saw coming. She clutched the suit jacket in her lap, her fingers twisting into the expensive fabric as she tried to collect herself. The warmth where it had rested on her shoulders still lingered against her skin, leaving her feeling strangely protected, despite how mortified she was. "I really am sorry," she said again, clearing her throat. "I didn't mean to take up your space like that." The man who had so effortlessly let her sleep on his shoulder studied her for a moment. His sharp gray eyes held no hint of annoyance, just calm amusement. "I already told you," he said, his voice smooth and unbothered. "It's fine. You looked exhausted." His slight British accent gave his words an effortless elegance, making everything he said sound oddly comforting. Lily didn't know what to say back. As if sensing her awkwardness, he extended a hand toward her. "Ethan Crawford," he said. His name caught her off guard. She had expected something else, something more intimidating. Lily hesitated, then shook his hand. His palm was warm, his grip firm yet gentle, carrying an air of quiet confidence. "Lily Bennett," she replied, managing a small smile. "Lily," he repeated, almost like he was testing how it felt to say it. "Nice to meet you." She nodded, suddenly all too aware of how ordinary she must look next to him, her faded jeans, worn-out hoodie, and scuffed sneakers, in sharp contrast to his flawless suit, crisp shirt, and expensive watch. Ethan leaned back slightly. "Heading to Boston for business or pleasure?" Lily let out a quiet, humorless laugh. "Neither." He raised an eyebrow but didn't press further. The flight attendant returned with 2 bottles of water, offering Ethan a smile that was just a little too warm. "Here you go, Mr. Crawford," she said sweetly, then handed Lily her bottle with a more neutral expression. "Here you go, Mr. Crawford," she said sweetly, then turned to Lily. "Ma'am." Lily caught the slight shift in tone but ignored it. "Thank you," she murmured, twisting the cap off her bottle and taking a sip. "Do you fly this route often?" she asked, realizing she knew absolutely nothing about the man sitting next to her. Ethan let out a soft chuckle. "More times than I care to admit. Work keeps me in the air more than on the ground." "What kind of work?" He paused briefly, just enough for her to notice, then said smoothly, "Business consulting. Mostly international markets." Lily frowned a bit. It sounded vague, purposefully vague. "That explains the suit," she teased lightly, trying to settle her nerves. Ethan smirked. "And what about you? What brings you to Boston?" Lily hesitated, tightening her grip on her water bottle. "Family emergency," she admitted, her voice softer. Ethan's expression shifted. The amusement faded, replaced by something more gentle. "I'm sorry," he said sincerely. Lily forced a small smile. "It's okay. Just hoping I get there in time." He didn't pry further, which she was grateful for. They sat in a comfortable silence, the low hum of the plane filling the quiet between them. Outside the window, the sky stretched out in a vast blanket of darkness, scattered with faint stars. Lily hadn't expected this flight to be anything more than a stressful necessity. She certainly hadn't expected to meet someone like Ethan Crawford, and she had no idea just how much this stranger was about to upend her life. Somewhere over the Midwest, the flight attendants rolled their carts through the cabin again, offering coffee and light snacks. Lily rubbed her hands over her face, exhaustion tugging at her bones. She needed caffeine, desperately. "Coffee?" Ethan asked, catching how sluggishly she blinked. She nodded. "As much as they'll let me have." Ethan signaled the attendant, and within minutes they both had steaming cups in front of them. Lily wrapped her hands around the warm cup and took a slow sip. The bitter taste didn't do much to erase her exhaustion, but it was something. Ethan watched her quietly. "You have a kid, don't you?" he said suddenly. Lily nearly choked on her coffee. "Excuse me?" Ethan smirked at her reaction. "You kept mumbling about school fees in your sleep, and you have that look." "That look?" she repeated, raising an eyebrow. "That I haven't slept in 7 years and caffeine is the only thing keeping me alive look." Lily snorted. "Okay, fair point." She reached into her pocket for her phone and pulled up a photo of Mia, holding it out for him to see. "This is my daughter, Mia. She just turned 7. Ethan took the phone, studying the picture with surprising attentiveness. "She's got your eyes," he said softly. Lily smiled. "Yeah, and her dad's stubbornness." Ethan glanced at her. "You two still together?" She shook her head. "No, we divorced a couple of years ago. It was for the best." Ethan nodded, as if he understood. "That's never easy." "No," Lily agreed, her fingers tightening around her coffee cup. "It's not." A brief silence settled between them. Then Ethan leaned back, stretching slightly. "I don't have kids, but my sister has 2. I see that same exhausted look on her face every time I visit." "So you have siblings?" "Just one, younger sister. She's a doctor, works too much, just like me." Lily smiled. "So it runs in the family." "Apparently," he said with a faint smirk. There was something about the way he spoke, steady, thoughtful, but guarded, like someone who had learned to choose his words carefully. Lily didn't push. She wasn't even sure why she was so curious, but there was something about him that drew her in. She'd spent the past few years just trying to survive. She hadn't had time for small talk with handsome strangers in expensive suits. But tonight on this plane, everything felt different. Maybe it was the exhaustion. Or maybe, just maybe, it was Ethan Crawford himself. The low hum of the airplane engines filled the space between them. Outside the window, the endless black sky was dotted with tiny flickers of faraway city lights. Far below, Lily couldn't shake the awareness of Ethan beside her. He was composed and unreadable, the kind of man who never seemed rattled, yet there was something under that calm surface, a restraint, like he was holding back far more than he showed. "So," Ethan said at last, breaking the silence, "what does Mia like, besides making her mom lose sleep?" Lily smirked, relaxing a little. "Dinosaurs. She's completely obsessed. She knows every name, every era. If you let her talk about it, you're stuck for hours." Ethan chuckled. "Sounds like my kind of kid. I was the same way when I was little, drove my mother crazy with dinosaur facts." "Oh really?" Lily raised a brow. "What's your favorite one then?" Ethan leaned back, pretending to think. Velociraptor. Fast, clever, underestimated." Lily laughed. "I should introduce you to Maya. She'd respect that choice." Something flickered across Ethan's face then, a quick, unreadable emotion. But before Lily could dwell on it, the plane lurched. A sudden jolt rocked the cabin, and a chorus of startled gasps rippled through the passengers. The seatbelt sign dinged back on as the captain's voice came over the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've hit an unexpected patch of turbulence. Please remain seated and keep your seatbelts fastened." Lily's hands flew to the armrests, gripping tight. She wasn't usually scared of flying, but the sudden drop made her heart hammer in her chest. Ethan must have noticed, because without saying a word, he reached over and gently covered her hand with his. "Just turbulence," he said quietly. He said calmly, "Nothing to worry about." His voice was so steady, so sure that Lily felt her pulse slow down a little. She glanced at their hands, his large and warm, perfectly still, hers smaller, trembling just slightly. She didn't pull away. The turbulence eventually eased, leaving a faint tension behind in the cabin air. Lily took a deep breath, trying to steady her nerves. A tiny part of her almost wanted to lean back into that warmth, to borrow his steadiness for just a moment longer. But she forced herself to sit upright, clutching the armrest instead. "Not a fan of flying?" Ethan asked, retracting his hand as if he sensed she needed some space again. "It's not that," she admitted. "I think it's just everything piling up." Ethan nodded knowingly. "Makes sense." Lily studied him for a moment. There was something about him, something just out of reach. Her mind buzzed with questions she didn't dare say out loud. Who are you when you're not wearing this calm mask? Why do you feel like the safest stranger I've ever met? "What about you?" she asked quietly. "You seem like the type who's always in control." Do you ever get nervous? Ethan smirked, but there was a flicker of something darker behind it. Not often, he said simply. That answer felt too neat, too rehearsed. Lily wasn't sure why she cared so much, but she did. She leaned back, mimicking his relaxed posture. You're a businessman, you travel all the time, you read old classics on planes, you're weirdly good at calming down a total stranger, but you don't really talk about yourself much. Why is that? Ethan's lips twitched into a small grin. I could ask you the same thing. Lily let out a soft huff of laughter. Fair point. A beat of quiet passed, then unexpectedly, Ethan sighed and ran a hand through his dark hair, messing up its perfectly styled look. All right, Lily Bennett, let's make a deal. She raised an eyebrow. A deal? You tell me something real about yourself, and I'll do the same. No surface-level answers. Lily considered this. Okay, she agreed, but you go first. Ethan exhaled, tapping his fingers lightly on the armrest. I wasn't always in control, he said after a moment. When I was younger, my life was chaotic. I had to learn early that if I didn't control things, someone else would. Lily blinked. That was more than she'd expected him to share. Hearing that tiny crack in his polished armor made her chest tighten in a way she didn't understand. Your turn, Ethan prompted gently. Lily hesitated, then spoke. I always thought I'd be more than this. Ethan tilted his head slightly. More than what? She swallowed, her voice barely above a whisper. More than a diner waitress barely scraping by. More than a single mom who's always behind on rent. I used to have dreams, but somewhere along the way, life happened, and I had to let them go. Ethan was quiet for a long moment. Then he said something she didn't expect. Maybe it's time to get them back. Lily stared at him, something tightening in her chest. For the first time in a long time, she wondered if she really could. The soft chime of the flight attendant's announcement cut through her thoughts. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be starting our descent into Boston shortly. Please return to your seats and make sure your seatbelts are fastened. Lily's stomach twisted. It was almost time. She glanced at Ethan, who had gone back to his book, but his eyes weren't really on the pages. His fingers drummed absently against the leather cover, his thoughts clearly somewhere else. Finally, he turned to her. Do you have a ride from the airport? Lily blinked. No, I was just going to grab a cab. Ethan nodded, like he'd expected that. Let me give you my driver's number. He can take you anywhere you need to go. Lily frowned slightly. That's not necessary. I know, Ethan said, calm and certain. But I'd like to anyway. She hesitated. Was this crossing a line? But when she looked into Ethan's steady gray eyes, she felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Safe. She exhaled and nodded. Okay. Ethan pulled out a sleek business card and handed it to her. She glanced down at the elegant lettering. Ethan Crawford, Crawford International Holdings. Her breath caught. She knew that name. Ethan Crawford wasn't just some businessman. He was one of the most powerful corporate figures in the country. Lily slowly lifted her eyes to him. Business consulting, huh? She said dryly. Ethan had the decency to look slightly amused. I might have understated that part. Lily shook her head, half exasperated, half intrigued. She should have felt intimidated, but all she could think was, what on earth did I just get myself into? The plane had landed, and the cabin was alive with the familiar rustle of passengers gathering their things, overhead bins opening, seatbelts unclicking. But Lily stayed in her seat, staring at the business card in her hand. Ethan Crawford. She wasn't the type to follow billionaires or corporate headlines, but even she'd heard of Crawford International Holdings. His name popped up in financial news, big mergers, and high-stakes deals, and she'd just spent hours asleep on his shoulder. You okay? Ethan's voice pulled her back to reality. Lily looked up and found him watching her, expression unreadable. You didn't mention you're basically a financial kingpin, she said, arching an eyebrow. Ethan chuckled, clearly not surprised by her reaction. I find introductions go smoother when I don't lead with that. Lily snorted to spite herself. Right. Because business consultant sounds way less terrifying. Ethan lifted a shoulder in a lazy half shrug. It does the job. Before she could say anything else, the flight attendant's voice came over the intercom. Thank you for flying with us. Welcome to Boston, Ethan said softly. Lily let out a slow breath. This was it. She was here for her father, for whatever the next few days would bring. and somehow she had stepped right into the orbit of a man who lived in an entirely different world from hers. As the line of passengers shuffled forward, Ethan easily pulled down both of their bags from the overhead bin. He handed hers to her without a word. "Thank you," Lily murmured, still trying to wrap her head around everything. Ethan nodded, but didn't move away. "My driver's waiting out front," he said. "Come with me. He'll take you wherever you need to go." Lily hesitated. She should say no. He'd already done more than enough. But then she pictured herself scrambling to find a cab, rushing alone through a city that didn't wait for anyone, her nerves already frayed by what she was about to face at the hospital. And then she thought about Ethan's calm steadiness on the plane, the way he'd made her feel safe, never once making her feel small despite how different their lives were. A fragile warmth spread in her chest at the memory, and for once she didn't want to feel alone. Finally, she nodded. "Okay." Ethan's expression didn't change much, but something flickered in his eyes. And just like that, Lily Bennett stepped off the plane beside a man who, whether she realized it or not, had the power to change her life forever. The moment she stepped outside, the cold Boston air hit her like a wave. The city pulsed with life, horns blaring, headlights flashing, cars weaving through tight lanes. It was all so loud and restless. She'd grown up near here, but after years in Chicago, she'd almost forgotten how intense it could be. The chaos pressed against her ribs, making her want to curl into herself, until she felt Ethan's presence beside her, steady as a heartbeat. Ethan's driver, a tall, broad-shouldered man in a black suit, was already waiting at the curb. He gave Ethan a polite nod before opening the back door of a sleek black Bentley. Lily paused for just a second before sliding in. The interior was pure luxury, soft leather seats, the subtle scent of expensive cologne, the quiet purr of the engine as the door clicked shut behind her. Ethan climbed in next to her, exuding that effortless confidence only someone like him could. "Where to?" the driver asked. "Linden Hill Hospital," Lily answered quietly. Ethan's gaze flicked to her, but he didn't pry. The car eased into traffic, merging smoothly with the chaos around them. For a few minutes, they sat in silence. Lily stared out the window, watching familiar streets blur past, old memories rising up. Part of her wanted to hide them away, but next to Ethan, she almost wished she could say them out loud, just to feel less alone with them for once. Then, to her surprise, Ethan spoke. "Do you have someone waiting for you there?" Lily exhaled slowly. "My aunt. She called 2 days ago to tell me my dad's condition had gotten worse." Ethan nodded, his face unreadable. "How long has he been sick?" he asked gently. Lily hesitated. She wasn't used to opening up about this, especially not to a billionaire she'd just met. "He was diagnosed about a year ago. I thought he had more time." Her voice cracked a little at the end, and Ethan picked up on it instantly. "You would have come sooner," he said quietly. "If you could," Ethan said, his tone even. Lily looked down at her hands. "Yeah." There was no pity in his eyes, just quiet understanding. "You're here now," Ethan said simply. Lily swallowed past the lump in her throat. "Yeah, I am." And for the first time since getting that phone call, she let herself breathe. When they pulled up to the hospital entrance, Lily's heart pounded. This was it. "Thank you for the ride," she said, reaching for the door handle, but before she could step out, Ethan's voice stopped her. "Lily." She turned, surprised to find something different in his expression. "If you need anything at all, call me," he said. She blinked. "Ethan, you don't have to." "I know," he cut in smoothly, "but I want to." Lily stared at him, something unspoken passing between them. She'd never needed saving. She'd spent years figuring out everything alone. But something about Ethan Crawford made her think that maybe, just maybe, letting someone help wasn't the worst thing. Finally, she gave a small nod. "Okay." Ethan's eyes held hers for a moment longer, then he reached into his suit jacket and pulled out another business card. "This one looked different." "This one has my personal number," he said, handing it to her. Lily hesitated before taking it, her fingers brushing his for the briefest second. "Take care of yourself, Lily." And with that, she stepped out of the car. As she walked toward the hospital doors, she could feel his gaze following her. But she didn't look back. Somehow, she knew this wasn't the last time she'd see Ethan Crawford, not even close. Lily stepped through the hospital's sliding glass doors, the sharp scent of antiseptic and sterile air hitting her instantly. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead as she scanned the crowded waiting area, her pulse quickening. Her Aunt Rachel stood near the nurse's station, her face etched with exhaustion. When she spotted Lily, relief flickered in her tired eyes. "Lily, thank God you're here." Lily barely had time to nod before Rachel pulled her into a tight hug. "How is he?" Lily whispered, dreading the answer. Rachel exhaled shakily. "He's stable for now. The doctor said last night was rough, but he pulled through." The tension in Lily's chest eased just a little. "Can I see him?" Rachel nodded. "Come on." They walked through the quiet corridors, passing nurses moving between rooms and the soft murmur of low conversations. With every step, Lily's stomach twisted tighter. Then they reached the room. Lily paused, steadying herself before pushing the door open. Her father lay in the hospital bed, looking smaller than she had ever seen him. The man who had always been her anchor, her guide, now so fragile. Lily swallowed hard. "Dad," she whispered. His eyes fluttered open, unfocused for a moment. Then recognition slowly dawned, and a tired smile spread across his face. "Lily, you came." Lily rushed forward, taking her father's frail hand in hers. "Of course I did." Tears stung behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "I'm so sorry I didn't come sooner," she whispered. Her father squeezed her hand weakly. "You're here now, that's all that matters." Lily sat by his side, letting the weight of the moment sink in. No matter what happened next, she wasn't going anywhere. After hours at the hospital, Lily finally stepped outside for some fresh air. The cold night air stung her cheeks, but she welcomed it. She pulled out her phone and scrolled mindlessly, until she noticed it. A text from Ethan. "Just checking in. How's your father?" Lily stared at the screen, surprised. He barely knew her, yet he cared enough to ask. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she typed back. "He's stable for now. It was a long night, but I'm just grateful he's still here." A response popped up almost instantly. "I'm glad to hear that. I meant it when I said, if you need anything, just say the word." Lily found herself smiling, a real, unexpected smile. "You really don't have to keep checking in on me, you know. I know." Her heart did something strange in her chest. She'd spent years learning how to survive on her own, to rely on no one but herself, and for the first time in a long time, someone was offering to stand beside her, and she didn't know if she was ready for that. The next morning, Lily was sitting at her father's bedside when her phone vibrated again. This time it wasn't a text, it was a call. "Ethan." She hesitated, then stepped into the hallway and answered softly, "Hey." "Hey." Ethan's voice was smooth but had a slight edge she hadn't heard before. "I was wondering, have you eaten yet?" Lily blinked. That was the last thing she expected. Not really." "Good, because I'm sending a car. Meet me for breakfast." Lily's mouth dropped open. "Wait, what?" "Ethan, I can't just leave my dad. I'm not saying you have to disappear for hours," he cut in smoothly. "Just take a break. I'll have you back before he even notices you're gone." Lily hesitated. She should say no. She should stay put, focus on her father, not agree to breakfast with a man who'd already done more than enough for her. But before she could argue, Ethan's voice softened. "Lily, when was the last time you did something for yourself?" She hated how that question made her pause, because the truth was, she couldn't remember. Finally, she sighed. "Fine. But 1 hour, that's it." Ethan chuckled. "I'll be there soon. Outside in 10 minutes. And just like that, Lily Bennett found herself making another decision she never would have imagined. She stood outside the hospital entrance, rubbing her arms against the crisp morning air. She still wasn't sure why she'd agreed to this. Maybe it was exhaustion. Maybe it was because Ethan had been unshakably kind in ways she hadn't expected. Or maybe, deep down, she was just curious about him. Or maybe, she thought as she hugged herself tighter, she was so tired of feeling invisible that a part of her wanted to remember what it felt like to be seen. A sleek black car pulled up to the curb, the same one from the night before. The driver stepped out and gave her a polite nod. "Miss Bennett?" Lily hesitated for half a second, then nodded back and slid into the back seat. She sank into the plush leather as the city blurred by beyond the tinted windows. "What am I doing?" She pressed her fingertips to the glass, trying to steady her heartbeat. It all felt unreal, too polished, too easy, and yet a small voice deep down whispered, "Maybe it's okay to want something easy for once." 15 minutes later, the car eased to a stop in front of an elegant cafe tucked between towering glass buildings downtown. It wasn't the kind of place Lily had ever set foot in before, the kind where people in designer suits discussed million-dollar deals over imported espresso. And yet, here she was. The driver opened her door, and as soon as she stepped out, Ethan was already there. Tailored suit, calm presence, looking effortlessly in control. "You made it," he said smoothly. Lily crossed her arms. "I don't remember getting much of a choice." Ethan smirked. "You always have a choice, Lily." She narrowed her eyes at him, but followed him inside anyway. A hostess led them to a private booth tucked in the back, away from curious eyes. Within minutes, a perfectly polished waiter appeared with menus and a knowing smile. "The usual, Mr. Crawford?" Lily raised an eyebrow. "The usual?" "Yes, and for her, bring a latte and the breakfast platter." Lily blinked. "Wow, just ordering for me now?" Ethan leaned back, studying her calmly. "You look like you need caffeine and real food. Am I wrong?" Lily opened her mouth, then closed it again. Damn it, he wasn't wrong. "Fine," she muttered, picking up her napkin, "but don't make a habit of it." Ethan's smirk deepened. When their food arrived, Lily realized just how hungry she really was. She barely waited for Ethan to say a word before digging in. "So," Ethan said after a few minutes, his tone casual but his eyes sharp, "tell me something real." Lily paused, swallowing her bite of toast. "We're doing this again?" "Yes, because I have a feeling you don't let many people in." He wasn't wrong. She took a slow sip of her latte, stalling. Finally, she exhaled. "I used to want to be a journalist." The words felt raw, scraped from a version of herself she'd buried deep just to survive. Ethan's eyebrows lifted slightly, like he genuinely hadn't expected that. "What happened?" Lily let out a dry laugh. "Life. I got pregnant, plans changed, and I had to figure out how to survive." Ethan didn't speak right away. Then, quietly, he said, "That doesn't mean you have to stop dreaming." Lily looked up at him, something sharp and unfamiliar twisting in her chest. "It's a little late for that." Ethan's expression turned unreadable. "I don't believe that." Lily huffed a soft, disbelieving laugh. "Easy for you to say. You probably always knew you'd be successful." "But..." Ethan went quiet for a moment, then said, "Not exactly." Lily narrowed her eyes. "What do you mean?" Ethan sipped his coffee, then set the cup down. "I wasn't born into wealth, Lily. I built my company from nothing." Lily blinked, caught off guard. "Wait, seriously?" Ethan nodded. "I grew up in a tiny apartment in South Boston. My dad worked in a warehouse, my mom was a nurse. We always had enough to get by, but never much more than that. I learned early that if I wanted something different, I'd have to build it myself." Lily stared at him. She'd always assumed he'd been born with every door wide open, privileged, polished, untouchable. But hearing this, it made him feel different, more real. "Why didn't you ever tell me that?" she asked quietly. Ethan smirked faintly. "You never asked." Lily rolled her eyes but found herself wondering, for the first time, who exactly is Ethan Crawford? And why did she suddenly want to know everything about him? Breakfast was winding down when Ethan suddenly leaned forward, his gray eyes sharp. "I have an idea." Lily tensed. "I feel like I should be worried." Ethan ignored that. "You said you wanted to be a journalist, right?" Lily frowned. "Yeah, but what if I gave you a job?" Lily stared at him. "What?" "Not at Crawford Holdings," Ethan clarified. "I own a media company, one of the biggest independent digital news outlets in the country. I can get you in." Lily's stomach flipped. "Ethan, that's insane. You don't even know if I'm any good at it." Ethan tilted his head slightly. "I know you're smart, and I know you don't belong waiting tables for the rest of your life." Lily felt overwhelmed. This was too much. "Why would you do this?" "For me," she whispered. Ethan's gaze locked with hers. "Because I believe in second chances." Silence settled between them. For years, Lily had convinced herself that this was it, that her dreams had ended the day she found out she was pregnant with Mia, that she wasn't meant for more. But now, sitting across from Ethan Crawford, she wondered, maybe I'd been wrong. She sat frozen, staring at him like he'd just offered her the moon. "You're offering me a job?" she repeated, disbelief clear in her voice. Ethan leaned back in his seat, his sharp gray eyes unwavering. "Yes." Lily blinked. "Just like that?" "Just like that," he confirmed. Her heart hammered in her chest. This was insane. For years she'd fought to survive, telling herself dreams were childish things she'd traded away the moment she became a mother. And now, a man she barely knew was handing her a chance to rewrite her life. Ethan, I appreciate this, but she hesitated, searching for words. I haven't written anything professionally in years. I wouldn't even know where to start. Ethan's expression didn't shift, then learn. You're smart, you have grit, you'll figure it out. Lily let out a shaky laugh. It's not that simple. It is, Ethan said firmly. You're the one making it complicated. Lily hated that he was right. She should have been jumping at this chance, but instead, doubt crept in, whispering in her ear, what if you fail? What if you're not good enough? What if you take this job and lose everything? And then there was Mia. I have a daughter, Ethan. Lily reminded him quietly. I can't just take some high-profile job and hope for the best. I need stability. And what part of waiting tables for minimum wage feels stable to you? Ethan countered, calm but unyielding. Lily clenched her jaw. I get it, Ethan went on, his voice gentler now. You're scared. But don't let fear keep you stuck somewhere you've outgrown. Lily swallowed hard. She didn't know what scared her more, the possibility of failing, or the possibility that she might actually succeed. A dozen excuses crowded her mind. Rent, childcare, bills. But behind all of it was the simple truth. She didn't remember how to want more for herself without feeling guilty for it. Lily spent the next few days going in circles in her head. Her father's condition stayed steady, so she spent nearly every waking hour by his side at the hospital. But Ethan's offer lingered in the back of her mind, echoing every time she let herself imagine more. She caught herself staring at nurses scribbling charts and wondered what it would feel like to hold a notepad again. This time, not for diner orders, but for real stories. Then on the fourth night, her phone rang. She glanced at the screen. Unknown number. Frowning, she answered. Hello? Is this Lily Bennett? The voice was crisp, professional. Yes, who's this? My name is Charlotte Grant. I'm the editor-in-chief at Crawford Media. Lily's stomach flipped. He what? Ethan told me about you, Charlotte continued briskly. And I'll be blunt. I don't usually entertain favors, but I read some of the articles you wrote in college. You have potential. So here's the deal. If you want it, there's a staff writer position open for you. No handouts, no special treatment. You'll have to prove yourself. But if you're serious about getting back into journalism, this is your shot. Lily's brain practically short-circuited. This was real. It wasn't just Ethan tossing out an idea over breakfast. He'd actually made it happen. A rush of fear and thrill tangled together so tight she almost couldn't breathe. I don't know what to say, Lily stammered. Say yes, Charlotte said bluntly. Lily exhaled shakily. Can I think about it? You have 24 hours. After that, the offer's gone. The line went dead. Lily sat there, phone in her lap, her heart pounding. She had a choice to make, and for the first time in years, the future felt wide open. The next morning, Lily still hadn't made a decision. She walked into her father's hospital room, her mind spinning. Morning, sweetheart, her father greeted weakly, his voice thin but warm. Morning, Dad, Lily said, forcing a smile. Her father studied her for a long moment, like he could see right through her. What's on your mind? Lily hesitated. She hadn't told her father about Ethan, or the job offer. It all felt too big to squeeze into words. But before she could respond, there was a soft knock at the door. Lily turned and froze. Ethan stood in the doorway, holding a bouquet of fresh flowers. I figured it was time I introduced myself, he said smoothly. Lily blinked. Her father raised an eyebrow, clearly intrigued. And who might you be? Ethan smiled easily. Ethan Crawford, sir, a friend of your daughter's. Lily could practically feel her father's curiosity vibrating in the air. Well, Mr. Crawford, her dad said, amusement dancing in his tired voice, if you're here to see my Lily, I suppose that makes you important. Lily wanted to sink through the floor. Ethan just kept smiling. I'd like to think so. Her father chuckled, and for the first time in days, Lily felt something inside her ease. Because whether she liked it or not, Ethan Crawford was no longer just a stranger from an airplane. Lily could barely believe it. Ethan Crawford. The billionaire CEO she'd met by accident on a flight, now standing here in her father's hospital room chatting like he belonged. And of course, her dad already liked him. So Ethan, her dad said, a mischievous glint lighting his tired eyes. Are you my daughter's boyfriend, or do I need to start setting her up with someone else? Lily choked on thin air. Dad, she sputtered. Ethan, on the other hand, didn't even flinch. He leaned a fraction closer to Lily, that trademark smirk firmly in place. "I'd say we're still in the negotiation phase," he teased. Lily shot him a murderous glare. Her father laughed, and Lily sighed, completely outnumbered. After a few more minutes of light conversation, Ethan stood and turned to Lily. "Can we talk?" he asked gently. Lily hesitated, then nodded, and followed him out into the hallway, arms crossed tightly over her chest. "What are you doing here, Ethan?" she demanded in a low voice. "Checking on you," he said simply. Lily exhaled sharply. "You don't have to do that." "I know," Ethan said, his gaze steady on hers. "But I want to." And there it was again, that quiet, unshakable certainty that always threw her off balance. "You spoke to Charlotte?" Ethan added. "Did she make you an offer?" Lily nodded slowly. "She did. And I don't know, Ethan. It's a lot. I didn't ask for any of this." Ethan studied her for a long moment. "No," he agreed calmly, "but maybe it's time you start asking." Lily swallowed hard, because maybe, just maybe, he was right. Maybe for the first time in years, it was time to stop just surviving and start choosing. That night, Lily sat alone in the hospital's dim waiting area, staring at her phone. Charlotte's blunt words echoed in her head. "You have 24 hours. After that, the offer's gone." Lily exhaled sharply. Then, before she could overthink it, she dialed Charlotte. When the woman answered, Lily said firmly, "Yes." Charlotte's tone was crisp. "Yes?" Lily clenched her fist. "I'll take the job." A beat of silence. Then, "Good choice. Be in my office Monday morning." The line went dead. Lily let out a slow breath. This was it. She was stepping into the unknown, and for the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid. Lily stood outside Crawford Media headquarters, nerves coiling tight in her stomach. The building was sleek, modern, and intimidating as hell. Taking a deep breath, she walked inside. A receptionist greeted her and directed her to the 25th floor. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors finally opened, Charlotte Grant was already waiting. "Lily," Charlotte said briskly. "Follow me." Lily hurried after her, trying to absorb everything. The newsroom buzzed with controlled chaos, ringing phones, overlapping voices, and the furious clatter of keyboards. Charlotte led her to a desk tucked neatly into a corner with a good view of the open floor. "This is yours," Charlotte said. Lily stared. She had a desk. A real job. A second chance. "I expect you to prove yourself," Charlotte added, her tone sharp but not unkind. "Ethan may have opened the door for you, but if you don't deliver, you won't last here." Lily lifted her chin. "I wouldn't expect anything less." Charlotte's lips twitched in a half smirk. "Good. Now get to work." And just like that, Lily Bennett, former waitress, single mom, the woman who'd convinced herself her dreams were dead, stepped into an entirely new world. A few hours into her first day, Lily's phone buzzed. Ethan, how's the first day?" Lily smirked, typing back, "Your editor is terrifying. That's why she's the best. I think I might die." "You won't. You're tougher than you think." Lily stared at the words, something warm and steady settling in her chest. Before she could reply, another message popped up. "Ethan, dinner tonight. You owe me for the job hookup." Lily rolled her eyes. "Oh, so now I owe you?" "Absolutely. One dinner. That's it. Ethan, we'll see." Lily sighed, knowing full well that when it came to Ethan Crawford, nothing was ever just one thing. Lily drummed her fingers on the restaurant table, staring at the sleek, expensive menu in front of her. She'd only agreed to this dinner on one condition: no over-the-top place where every dish cost more than her entire grocery budget. Technically, Ethan had listened. The restaurant wasn't the kind with white tablecloths and chandeliers, but it was still miles away from the local diner she was used to. Dim lighting, polished wood, and a breathtaking view of the Boston skyline that looked almost too perfect to be real. And of course, Ethan Crawford looked completely at ease in all of it. "You're tense," he observed, sipping his whiskey. Lily narrowed her eyes. "You think?" Ethan smirked. "Relax. It's just dinner." "Dinner with a billionaire who casually flips my entire life upside down in his free time," Lily countered. "Yeah, no pressure at all." Ethan chuckled and set his glass down, his gray eyes glinting with that calm certainty that always made her feel both challenged and something else she wasn't ready to name. "Would it make you feel better if I said I'm just a guy eating steak?" Lily rolled her eyes. "Not even a little." Ethan laughed, a deep, rich sound that sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. As the meal went on, Lily found herself relaxing. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was the simple fact that Ethan wasn't trying to impress her. He asked about her work, her childhood, Mia. He listened, really listened, without interrupting, like what she said actually mattered. And in return, she found herself prying a little deeper into his world. It was reckless, how easy it felt to lower her guard in front of him. Each question and answer tugged her deeper into a comfort she hadn't let herself feel in years. "So, Mr. Billionaire," she teased, "what do you do for fun, besides running empires and flying first class?" Ethan smirked. "Would you believe me if I said boxing?" Lily raised a skeptical brow. "You? Boxing?" "Yes," he said, swirling his drink. "It keeps me focused. Plus, hitting something after a long day is a great stress reliever." Lily studied him, an image forming in her mind. Ethan Crawford, always composed, always controlled, in a boxing ring. Fists up, sweat sliding down his sharp jawline. She swallowed hard. The thought sent a quick, unwelcome heat through her, and she shifted in her seat, hoping he wouldn't notice. "I guess that makes sense," she muttered, quickly looking away. Ethan didn't miss the flicker in her expression. "What?" he asked, clearly amused. "Nothing," Lily shot back too fast. Ethan's smirk deepened, and just like that, Lily realized this dinner was dangerous. Because the more time she spent around Ethan Crawford, the harder it was to ignore whatever this was between them. It wasn't just his charm, it was the way he made the rest of the world feel quieter when he was near. As they finished their meal, Ethan leaned in slightly. "You're staying in Boston, right?" he asked. Lily blinked. "For now? Why?" Ethan's gaze didn't waver. "Because I want to see you again." Lily's breath caught. "Ethan, I'm not asking for anything serious," he cut in smoothly. "I just like spending time with you." Lily's heart pounded. This was a bad idea. A very bad idea. Ethan Crawford wasn't just a man, he was a storm, and she wasn't sure she could survive being swept up in it. "I don't know if that's a good idea," she admitted softly. "Why?" Ethan asked calmly. Lily hesitated. "Because I don't fit into your world." Ethan tilted his head slightly, eyes locked on hers. "Who says I want you to?" That answer stopped her cold. Because he wasn't asking her to change. He wasn't asking for anything except a chance, and that terrified her more than anything. Later that night, Lily sat on her small apartment couch staring at her phone. Ethan's text sat unread. "Ethan, dinner was fun, let's do it again." Lily sighed. She should ignore it. She should walk away before things got complicated, but instead, her fingers moved on their own. "Lily. Maybe?" "Ethan, I'll take that as a yes." Lily smiled despite herself, and just like that, she knew she was already in trouble. The following week passed in a blur. Lily spent her days drowning in deadlines at Crawford Media, proving to Charlotte that she deserved every inch of this job. Her nights were spent at the hospital, checking on her father and trying to push away thoughts of Ethan. But Ethan Crawford wasn't the kind of man who stayed on the sidelines. Every few days he'd text her. Casual, effortless, like he wasn't the most powerful man in any room he walked into. "Ethan, survive the newsroom today?" Lily. "Barely." "Sounds like you need a distraction. I swear, if you say dinner, lunch." Lily smirked at her screen but didn't reply. Because every time she even considered seeing him again, a quiet voice in the back of her mind whispered, "This is a bad idea." And she wasn't sure she was strong enough to ignore it. Part of her wanted him to stop asking. Because the more he tried, the more she wanted to say yes, and that scared her more than anything. Lily had just stepped out of the hospital when her phone buzzed again. This time, not a text, but a call. She hesitated, then answered, trying to sound casual. Hey. Ethan's voice was smooth as ever. "What are you doing right now?" "Just leaving the hospital," she said. A brief pause. Then, "How's your father?" Lily exhaled. "Stable. That's the best we can hope for." Ethan didn't say anything for a moment. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, softer. "I know you hate asking for help, but if you need anything..." "Ethan," Lily cut in gently, "I appreciate it. I do, but I'm fine." Ethan let out a soft chuckle. "You say that a lot." "Because it's true," he hummed, unconvinced. "All right then, since you're fine, come to an event with me this weekend." Lily stopped dead on the sidewalk. "Excuse me?" "A charity gala," Ethan said, like he hadn't just dropped a bomb. "I need a date." Lily blinked. "Ethan." "Before you say no," he interrupted smoothly, "think about it. One night, free food, open bar, and a chance to wear a ridiculously expensive dress on my dime. What's the worst that could happen? Lily let out a breathless laugh. You really don't take no for an answer, do you? Not when I know you want to say yes. Lily rolled her eyes. I'll think about it. Good, Ethan said easily. I'll have a dress sent to your apartment. Ethan, see you Saturday, Lily. And just like that, the line went dead. Lily stared at her phone, her pulse racing. What the hell had she just gotten herself into? She pressed the phone to her chest, fighting a helpless smile. Maybe she should have felt cornered, but all she felt was the wild rush of anticipation she couldn't admit to anyone. 2 days later, a box arrived at her door. Lily stared at it, hesitant. She hadn't officially agreed to go to the gala with Ethan, but, of course, that didn't stop him from assuming she would. With a sigh, she lifted the lid, and her breath caught. The dress was a deep, elegant shade of navy, with delicate beading that shimmered under the light. It was easily the most beautiful thing she'd ever owned. And it was also proof that Ethan Crawford was dangerous, because any man who could turn her entire world upside down with just a dress was a man she had no business letting in. Lily stepped into the grand ballroom, her heart pounding. Chandeliers sparkled overhead like stars, polished marble floors gleamed under soft light, and the air buzzed with low, elegant conversations. This wasn't her world. But then she saw him, standing near the bar, looking perfectly at ease in a black tux, his sharp gray eyes flickering with something unreadable the moment they found her. Lily swallowed hard. She should have said no, she should have walked away. But now, it was far too late for that. She took a deep breath, forcing her nerves to settle. She'd spent years convincing herself she didn't belong in places like this. Grand ballrooms, designer gowns, champagne toasts that cost more than her rent. And yet, Ethan Crawford had dragged her straight into it. He crossed the room toward her with that effortless, quiet command that made him seem untouchable. His gray eyes swept over her from head to toe, and for a second, Lily felt completely seen. You look stunning, Ethan murmured. Lily swallowed. He looked dangerous. Not in the physical sense, but in the way a man could ruin your carefully built life without even trying. This is insane, she muttered under her breath. A little, Ethan admitted with a faint smirk. But you're here, so I must have done something right. Lily sighed. Remind me again why I agreed to this? Because you secretly enjoy spending time with me, Ethan said easily. Lily scoffed. Keep dreaming, Crawford. But Ethan just laughed, a deep, rich sound, and for the first time that night, Lily didn't feel nervous anymore. The gala was exactly what she'd expected. Wealthy people draped in designer clothes, networking over overpriced drinks, pretending to care deeply about whatever charity was printed on the event program. She sipped her champagne and watched as Ethan navigated it all effortlessly, chatting with some senator's wife, making her giggle, making everyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. And Lily realized that Ethan Crawford could probably get anything he wanted, just by asking. You're staring, Ethan murmured suddenly, lips curved in amusement as he turned to her. Lily flushed, caught. I was just thinking how exhausting it must be to be you, she shot back, taking another sip of her drink. Ethan chuckled. Careful, Bennett. You almost sound like you care. Lily rolled her eyes. Let's not get carried away. Ethan leaned in, his voice lowering just for her. Too late. Lily's breath caught because for a heartbeat it felt like the entire glittering ballroom had vanished, leaving only him and her. She'd just excused herself to the restroom when she heard her name. Lily Bennett, right? She turned and froze. A woman in a blood-red gown stood blocking her path, sleek, dark hair, a sharp, knowing smile. Lily frowned slightly. Yes, the woman tilted her head, her smile a razor's edge. I'm surprised. Ethan usually keeps things separate. Lily's stomach tightened. I'm sorry, do we know each other? The woman's smile widened, but there was no warmth in it. Vanessa Caldwell, she said smoothly. And I know Ethan very well. Lily went completely still. Let me guess, Vanessa continued smoothly. He hasn't told you anything about me, has he? Lily wasn't sure what she hated more, the casual way Vanessa said it, or the sinking feeling that she might be right. When Lily found Ethan again, he was deep in conversation with another guest. But the second he caught her expression, his whole demeanor shifted. What happened? He asked immediately. Guiding her toward a quieter corner of the ballroom, Lily crossed her arms tightly over her chest. "Who is Vanessa Caldwell?" Ethan's jaw tightened. That was all the confirmation she needed. "So she's not just some random woman at this party," Lily said flatly. Ethan sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "She's my ex-fiancée." Lily just stared at him. "You're what?" "It was a long time ago," Ethan said carefully. "And you weren't planning on mentioning it?" Ethan exhaled sharply. "Lily, she's not important." "She seemed pretty important when she was warning me about you," Lily snapped. Ethan's eyes darkened. "What did she say?" Lily hesitated, then repeated quietly, "Just that you usually keep things separate." Ethan's jaw clenched harder. "That sounds like Vanessa." Lily narrowed her eyes. "Be honest with me, Ethan. Am I walking into something I shouldn't?" He held her gaze, his voice steady. No. Lily wanted to believe him. But by the time the night was over, she knew one thing for sure. Ethan Crawford had secrets. And if she wasn't careful, she was going to get caught in them. Lily's mind wouldn't stop spinning. The ride home from the gala had been silent. Ethan hadn't pushed her to talk, but she could feel it. The shift, the weight of what Vanessa had said. Now, lying in bed hours later, Lily stared at the ceiling, her thoughts a tangled mess. What if Vanessa was right? What if Ethan was the type who kept people at a safe distance? Worse, what if she was just another temporary distraction? Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Lily reached for it, pulse quickening. "Ethan, can't sleep either, huh?" Lily exhaled, staring at the words. Then, against her better judgment, she typed back, "Lily, too much on my mind." "Ethan, I'll take the blame for that." Lily hesitated before replying. "Lily, am I making a mistake?" There was a long pause. "Ethan, no. Are you sure?" Another pause. "Ask me that again in person." Lily's stomach tightened, because deep down she knew this wasn't over. Not even close. The next morning, Lily walked into the office feeling different. Crawford Media was its usual chaos. Phones ringing, reporters shouting over each other, the stale smell of burnt coffee hanging in the air. But none of that mattered. All she could think about was Ethan. So when she got a text from him that afternoon telling her to meet him in his private office, she didn't hesitate. But the moment she stepped inside, she knew something was off. Ethan stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, hands buried in his pockets, tension radiating off him in waves. "Lily," he said, turning to face her. "Ethan." A beat of silence. Then, "Vanessa wasn't wrong," Ethan admitted. Lily's stomach dropped. "So you do keep things separate?" she said, her voice careful but sharp. Ethan exhaled, dragging a hand through his hair. "I used to. With Vanessa, with everyone before her. It was easier that way." "And now?" Lily asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Ethan's eyes locked onto hers. "Now, I don't want to keep you separate from anything." Lily's heart thundered in her chest. Because this was the moment that could break her. She could have walked away. She could have told Ethan she didn't trust him, that she couldn't risk getting hurt. But instead, she stepped closer. "Then prove it." Ethan held her gaze. "How?" Lily's pulse thundered in her ears. "Let me in." Silence stretched between them, heavy, charged. Then Ethan reached out, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face, tucking it gently behind her ear. "All right, Bennett," he murmured. "Let's see how this goes." And just like that, Lily knew she was already in far too deep. Ethan Crawford was a man who thrived on control. Every part of his life was polished, curated, predictable. No loose ends, no unnecessary attachments, no chaos. But Lily Bennett, she was chaos. Not reckless, but the kind that unraveled him slowly. She challenged him, pushed him, made him question things he'd never dared question before. And now, standing in his office, her eyes searching as like she was daring him to be honest, Ethan realized something terrifying. He wanted to be. For the first time in his life, he wanted to let someone in. "All right," he said again, voice low. "No more walls, no more keeping you separate from anything." Lily studied him carefully. "You mean that?" Ethan nodded. "Yeah." "You do?" "Yeah." Lily exhaled, crossing her arms over her chest. "Then start by telling me the truth about Vanessa." Ethan stiffened. Of course she'd go straight for the hardest part. He turned away, dragging a hand along his jaw. "It ended years ago," he said quietly, "but it wasn't clean. She didn't take it well." Lily lifted a brow. "Did you break her heart, Crawford?" Ethan let out a dry, humorless laugh. "I think she broke her own." Lily frowned. "What does that mean?" He hesitated, then sighed. "Vanessa and I, We were never what everyone thought we were. It was calculated, more of a business arrangement than anything else. Our families pushed us together, and for a while, it made sense. Until his jaw tightened. Until I realized I couldn't love her the way she wanted me to. Lily's heart twisted because suddenly she understood. Vanessa wasn't just an ex, she was a reminder. A symbol of the man Ethan used to be. The man who kept everyone at arm's length because feeling something real was too risky. And me? Lily asked softly. What am I? Ethan turned back to her, his eyes steady and unguarded. The one thing I never saw coming. Lily swallowed hard. Because that was dangerous. That night, Lily sat alone on her apartment couch, replaying Ethan's words on a loop in her head. The one thing I never saw coming. It should have made her feel safe, special. But instead, it felt like walking a tightrope without a safety net. Her phone buzzed. Ethan. Ethan? Can I see you? Lily stared at the message, heart pounding. She should say no. She should take a step back, should pull away before this got even messier. But instead her fingers moved on their own. Yeah. And just like that, she knew. She was falling. And there was no stopping it now. Ethan showed up at her door less than 20 minutes later. He didn't hesitate. He didn't wait for an invitation. He just stepped inside, took one look at her, and crossed the space between them like he'd done it 1,000 times before. I don't do this, he murmured, voice low and rough. I don't chase people, Lily. Lily's heart pounded in her chest. Then why are you here? Ethan exhaled, sharp and shaky. Because I can't stay away. And then he kissed her. It wasn't soft, it wasn't tentative, it was everything unspoken, everything that had been building between them since that flight. And for the first time in a long, long time, Lily didn't think. She just let herself fall. Lily woke to sunlight streaming through her window and the faint, unmistakable scent of Ethan still lingering in her sheets. She blinked, disoriented, until it all came flooding back. The way he'd kissed her like a man used to control, but dangerously close to losing it. The way he'd pressed her against her front door, hands firm but careful. The way he'd whispered her name like it meant something. But they hadn't crossed that final line. Instead, they'd ended up curled together on her couch, talking about work, about Mia, about the kind of man Ethan wanted to be but wasn't sure he knew how. At some point, they'd fallen asleep, tangled up like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Now Lily sat up, heart hammering, and glanced at the other end of the couch. It was empty. Her stomach twisted. Had he left? Before she could dwell on it, the smell of fresh coffee drifted in. And then Ethan walked back into the living room, shirt unbuttoned at the collar, 2 mugs in hand. You're awake, he said, handing her one like it was the most ordinary thing in the world. Lily stared at him. You made coffee? Ethan smirked. I'm capable of basic human tasks, Bennett. Lily huffed a laugh. Could have fooled me. Ethan chuckled and sank down next to her on the couch. For a moment, neither of them said anything. Then, are you gonna run? Ethan didn't even blink. No. And just like that, Lily knew. She was in real trouble. The next few weeks blurred into something Lily didn't have a name for. She and Ethan weren't dating, not officially. But they weren't just friends either. They were something. Late-night phone calls, coffee before work, dinners that turned into hours of talking and stolen kisses in half-lit hallways. And the more time Lily spent with Ethan Crawford, the more dangerous it felt. Because it wasn't just physical. It was him. The way he looked at her like he was always trying to figure her out. The way his voice softened when he spoke about his past. The way he never pushed her too far. But never really let her go, either. Lily had spent years surviving, but now she was starting to feel alive again. And that was terrifying. She was at work when it happened. Her phone buzzed on her desk. She barely glanced at her phone before she saw the name, David. Her ex-husband. Her stomach dropped. She hadn't heard from him in months, not since he'd last picked up Mia and barely said 2 words to her. Heart pounding, Lily stepped outside the newsroom and answered. David. His voice was clipped, unreadable. We need to talk. Lily's pulse spiked. About what? About Mia? She went completely still, because the last time David had sounded this serious, her entire life had changed. What's going on? She demanded. David sighed. We'll talk when I see you tonight. And then he hung up. Lily stood frozen in the hallway, her mind spinning, her heart racing. Before she could stop herself, she opened her messages and typed, "Lily, I need to see you." Ethan's reply came within seconds. "Name the time and place." And just like that, Lily knew whatever was coming next would change everything. So that's how Lily's story wraps up for now. And if you're still here with me, right at this moment, then maybe, just maybe, something in her journey has touched your heart too. Because deep down, this wasn't just about a single mom and a billionaire. It was about all of us, about how life never stops testing us, how fear whispers that we can't change, and how sometimes the bravest thing we can do is let ourselves want more. I hope you felt it. Lily's quiet courage to say yes when doubt screamed no. Her choice to open the door again, to risk failure, to trust someone new, to dare to believe she deserved a bigger life. The Stoics teach us that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Seneca. How true that is, isn't it? We hold ourselves back with stories of what might go wrong, when the real danger is never letting ourselves truly live. If Lily's story reminds you of something you've buried, an old dream, a part of you that feels too heavy to pick up again, let this be your gentle sign. It's not too late. Life is always asking, will you stay safe or will you step forward anyway? So to you, my wonderful friends still here till the very end, thank you. Really. For listening, for feeling, for being the kind of person who doesn't just scroll by. If this story made you feel something, hope, warmth, maybe even a spark of courage, please like this video, share it with someone who might need it, and subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us keep telling stories that remind us all we're allowed to dream again. See you in the next chapter. Until then, keep choosing your more.